The swamp had its own pulse. You could feel it if you sat still long enough. The way the moss shifted with no wind. The way the water would ripple in the dead calm. It wasn't alive in the way the woods were alive. It was older, slower, meaner. I grew up around the Hollow, Cypress Hollow, a forgotten stretch of rotten water tucked deep in the southeast Louisiana backlands. Nobody ever came out this way unless they were born here or too dumb to know better. I was the former. My name's Hank Ledoux. My daddy raised me in a stilt house built above the waterline, said it'd been in the family since the 1800s. Back when the Ledouxs first settled out here, carving canoes from bald cypress trunks and stringing gator teeth on twine. He always said the swamp gave, but it also took. More than it gave, some years. I didn't really understand what he meant until Uncle Roy disappeared. Roy was the kind of man who lived off the land, the kind old folks told stories about. He could shoot a squirrel clean through the eye at 50 yards and skin a gator before it stopped twitching. He'd been out in the Hollow since before I was born. Then one summer, he went out to check his traps and never came back. They found his boat 3 days later, drifting in the reeds near Deadman's Cut. No blood, no gear, just deep gouges on the wooden edge of the pirogue too wide for gators, too jagged for knives. Maybe a big cat, the sheriff mumbled, not believing it himself. My daddy didn't say a word. He just went outside, lit a cigarette, and stared at the swamp like it had said something unforgivable. That night, I heard him whispering in the dark. Not praying, just muttering. Over and over. They're waking up. I left Cypress Hollow when I turned 19. Couldn't take the silence, the rot, the shadows that moved where they shouldn't. Moved to Baton Rouge. Took a job stocking shelves. Got myself a girl. A crappy apartment. A normal life. But Cypress Hollow has a way of calling you back. It started with a phone call. Your daddy passed. I drove back down the next morning. Same 2-lane highway, same rusty road signs half-eaten by vines. When I got to the house, the porch light was flickering even though there hadn't been power run to that part of the Hollow in years. A generator maybe, or something else. He'd left everything to me. The land, the house, and a letter. Yellowed, folded 4 times and damp with sweat or tears. The handwriting was scratchy, not quite his. Like his hand had been shaking too hard to hold the pen. Hank, I didn't tell you everything about your uncle. He didn't disappear. He was taken. They're in the water, under the muck. They're not dead. Not really. Keep the doors locked at night. Don't go past the hanging tree. Burn the boats if they call your name. I folded it up and put it in my pocket. I didn't believe it. Not really. But something deep in my ribs started aching when I read it. Like my bones remembered something I didn't. That night, I stayed in the old house. It smelled like damp rot and tobacco. The wind never really stopped blowing, but it didn't sound like wind. It was wetter, more whisper than howl. Something you felt behind your eyes, more than in your ears. Around midnight, I heard the water slosh. Just once. I got up and looked out the back window. The moon reflected in the black water like a white coin sunk deep in tar. Nothing moved. Nothing but the trees swaying in ways trees shouldn't sway when there's no wind. Then something broke the surface, something pale and slow. I leaned closer. It was a hand. Just a hand. Reaching up out of the swamp. Long fingers. Bloated skin. A wedding ring still clinging to the bone. And then it was gone. In the morning, I walked to the edge of the water. The mud sucked at my boots like it wanted to keep me. I stared at the spot I thought I'd seen the hand. Nothing but lily pads and bugs now. I turned to go and saw it, hung in the tree by the dock, a string of teeth. Human teeth. Bound together with fishing line, dangling like a wind chime, the enamel stained black. I stumbled back and fell into the mud, my breath catching in my throat. Then I heard something move behind me. Not an animal. Not a person. A sound like something dragging itself through reeds and moss. I ran. Later that day, I drove to town. The bait shop was still there. The same old man ran it, Clem Babineau. He'd been ancient when I was a kid. Now he looked fossilized. You back for good? He asked, chewing a toothpick. Just settling my daddy's things. He nodded, but his eyes were different. Shifty. Like he wanted to say something but couldn't. I asked about the swamp. About Uncle Roy. About the things people said. He just spat and said, "Some things ain't meant to be pulled from the mud, son." That night, I didn't sleep. I heard the voices again. They didn't come from the water this time. They came from under the house. Whispers, soft, wet, like someone breathing water through a reed. I went outside with a flashlight and a shotgun. Something moved beneath the boards. I shined the light. Eyes, dozens of them. Milky, reflecting the light like animal eyes, but too human, too familiar. They blinked, then vanished. The water under the house churned and sloshed, and then everything went still. Except for the smell. It lingered. Wet meat, rotting wood, copper and teeth. The next morning, I found footprints in the mud around the house. Bare feet, long toes, webbed. They circled the porch, paused at the windows, at the door, and every print faced inward. I left the footprints alone. I didn't try to wipe them away. Something about them felt sacred, like erasing them would be worse than letting them sit there, staring at the house. Instead, I walked the perimeter, shotgun in hand, the barrel twitching with every crack of a branch or splash of a frog. I didn't sleep that night, just sat in the rocking chair, facing the swamp, eyes bloodshot and locked on the black water. I had to know what they were. I started with the family records. My daddy kept boxes of old papers, letters, photos in the attic. I dug through them like a man possessed. One letter was from 1892. They keep singing at night. Not words, just that sound, like water bubbling through a man's throat. I fear they were not truly drowned, but changed. Another, 1911. The preacher disappeared after baptizing the Rousseau girl. They found his boots on the shore. His voice still echoes in the bayou. I don't go out past dusk. Photo after photo of solemn-eyed men with wet cuffs and blood on their boots. And at the bottom of one box, a map, hand-drawn, ink faded with age. Marked in red was a spot labeled Chapel of the Hollow. I'd never heard of it. Daddy never mentioned it. But something about it made my stomach twist like a knot of snakes. I had to go. I took the old pirogue out just after noon. The water barely rippled. The trees arched over like ribs. The sun dimmed the deeper I paddled. Birds didn't call. Bugs didn't hum. Even the frogs were silent. Dead Man's Cut passed on my left, a long channel where 3 people had vanished over the years. And beyond that, near the edge of the hollow's heart, I saw it. Not a chapelle, a ruin. Stone eaten by vines. A cross made of bone nailed above the entry. A bell still hanging but green with rust and thick with spider webs. I docked the boat and stepped onto the mud. It groaned beneath me. Inside, the chapel was cold, unnaturally cold. The air thick like syrup. The pews were gone, rotted down to slivers. But the altar remained, carved with symbols that hurt my eyes to look at. And behind it, carved into the stone, the water remembers. The flesh returns. Then I heard the breathing. From the walls, from beneath the floor, I turned and saw them. 4 figures, standing in the shadows. Skin bloated, gray-green. Eyes pale as boiled eggs. Mouths half open, leaking brackish water. But the worst part? I knew their faces. Uncle Roy, my great-grandfather. Others I'd only seen in photos, their jaws stretched impossibly wide. And in perfect unison, they whispered, "Hank." I ran, fell into the mud, scrambled for the boat, pushed off into the current just as something long and pale broke the water beside me. It wasn't a fish. It had fingers. One still wore a rusted ring. They didn't follow. Not then. But I felt their eyes on me all the way home. That night, the voices came again. Not whispers, not wet gasps. Singing, low, hollow, drenched in sorrow. I barricaded the door, lit every candle I could find, sat with the shotgun across my lap. Then I saw it, out in the water, just at the edge of the light. A man, standing chest deep in the swamp, unmoving, staring. More figures rose beside him, then more. A dozen, 100. The drowned ones, their skin shone in the moonlight like wet leather. Their mouths hung slack, and all of them were singing, calling, "Ha, ha." The next morning, I drove to see Clem again. Slammed my fist on the bait shop counter. "What the hell are they?" I asked. He didn't even flinch, just stared at me, eyes hollow. "They were here before us," he said. "Before the bayou, before the trees. Back when this land was all water and bone. Folks tried to drown them, tried to bury them. But you can't drown the hollow. Then what do they want?" He leaned in. His voice dropped. "They want you." I didn't go back home right away. I drove in circles, ate at a diner in silence, sat by the river and tried not to think. But when I did go back, everything was wrong. The porch steps were soaked, mud smeared across the door. Inside, water pooled on the floorboards, dark and thick. The teeth string was gone from the tree. And carved into the wall, above the bed, in gouged letters, "We remember you." The dreams got worse. In them, I was underwater, lungs full, eyes wide, floating with them, the drowned ones, their fingers tangled in mine, their mouths pressed to my ears, whispering secrets I couldn't understand. And deeper still, beneath the silt, I saw something vast, a shape, larger than a house, larger than the chapel. Something sleeping, or waiting. One night, I woke to find water in the house. Not a flood, not a leak. It was rising from beneath the floorboards, and floating on its surface bloated, pale was Uncle Roy's face. Eyes open, mouth smiling, teeth black. I didn't scream, not out loud, just stared at Roy's waterlogged face drifting on the rising swamp water filling my childhood home. I backed into the corner, the shotgun shaking in my hands. Candlelight flickering across warped wood and slick black puddles. He blinked, just once, and then, as if he were pulled by invisible hands, his bloated corpse slipped beneath the surface, the water boiling for a moment in his wake. I ran, didn't grab clothes, didn't grab my wallet, just bolted out the front door, splashing through the yard, water up to my shins. The trees whispered above, the air buzzed, thick and metallic, as if the swamp was feeding off the fear. I made it to the truck, locked the doors, sat there, soaked and shaking. That's when I noticed the muddy fingerprints on the inside of the windshield. They weren't mine. I drove until I reached the paved roads. Then I drove some more. At sunrise, I pulled over at an old church outside of Bayou Teche, a tiny white building with a broken cross on top. I didn't go in to pray. I went in because I didn't know where else to go. Inside, I sat in the back pew, drenched and dirty. Just breathing, trying to remind myself the world was still dry somewhere. An old woman came out of the back. "Child," she said. "You've seen them, haven't you?" I didn't answer. She sat beside me, not close, but not far either. Her dress was plain, her eyes were tired. "They always come for the bloodline," she whispered. "Once your kin go in, they mark you. You become of the hollow." "I didn't ask for this," I said. "No one does." She handed me a necklace, an old iron key on a leather cord. "What's this?" "Your only way out." Then she was gone. No footsteps, no sound. I left the church with the key in my palm, sweating cold. Back at the house, everything was dry, bone dry. No water, no smell, no sign of Roy or the flooding. I questioned my sanity. Maybe the hollow had always been a little sick in the head. Maybe I finally caught it. But when I stepped inside, I saw a new carving on the wall. The door is open. That night, I used the map. The red X marked a second place I hadn't noticed before. Something called the Well of Voices. I should have burned the map. Instead, I packed a flashlight, the key, and a sidearm I hadn't used since high school. The well was deeper into the hollow than I'd ever gone. No trail, just mud and rot and ancient trees with trunks wide as sheds. Eventually, I found it. An open pit in the earth, ringed with stones. No rope, no bucket. Just a dark circle in the swamp floor that drank light like a mouth. I leaned over, careful. Then the voices rose up. Dozens, hundreds. Men, women, children, all whispering at once. Some were crying, some were laughing. All of them were saying one thing: "Come home." I nearly fell in. Something gripped my mind like a fist, but I pulled back. Then I saw it etched in the stone beside the well. They were us before they were hungry. I went back to the house one last time. Something in me knew it was almost over. The hollow doesn't let you leave unfinished. I boarded the doors, laid salt along the windows, loaded every shell I had. Then I sat at the table and opened the last letter my daddy ever wrote. Hank, if you're reading this, then they've already touched you. You can't fight them with bullets. You can't run, but you can end it. Burn the water. Burn what sleeps beneath it. The chapel's not just a ruin. It's a tomb, and the key is in the well. I knew what I had to do. That night, I returned to the well. I tied myself to the nearest tree with rope, secured a harness, lowered myself down. The air was like breathing tar. The walls pulsed. Wet stone, slick with veins. And at the bottom, God help me, there was a door. Iron, ancient, covered in barnacles and claw marks. The key fit. It turned. The door swung open. And I saw it. Not a creature. A mass. A colony. An ancient living thing. Flesh, teeth, limbs all knotted together in a nest of bone and algae. A hive of every soul ever drowned in Cypress Hollow. They were all in there. Roy, my daddy, children from the old photos, even strangers I'd never known, their faces twisted in silent screams. And it saw me. All of it. The thing moved toward me, shifting with impossible slowness. I lit the Molotov cocktail I'd made, gritted my teeth, and said my father's name, Jules Ledoux. Then I threw it. The tunnel erupted in fire. The scream shook the walls. Water surged. The rope snapped. I don't remember climbing. I remember crawling, scraping my nails raw, slipping in ash and blood. Something grabbed my ankle, but I kicked. And then I was out. The well collapsed behind me in a geyser of flame and mud. The hollow screamed for hours, then went silent. The fire burned for 3 nights. Not flames, not like wood. The swamp itself seemed to boil, hiss, churn from the inside. Smoke rolled out of the water. Frogs and birds fled. Trees turned black at the roots. And the cries, oh God, the cries. They weren't human, but they weren't animal either. They were both, or neither. And then, silence. The hollow went still. Not peaceful, dead. I spent the next 2 days holed up in the house, shotgun still across my lap, too afraid to sleep. My hands were raw, my eyes burned. My ears rang from the screams of that thing. I didn't know if I'd won or just survived. On the 3rd day, the water started to recede. Just a little, just an inch or 2. But the smell changed. Less rot, more salt, almost clean. The drowned ones didn't return. The singing stopped. No more footsteps on the porch. No more whispers under the floor. Something deep had shifted, like the hollow had lost its voice. I left Cypress Hollow a week later, boarded up the house, said a quiet goodbye at the water's edge, scattered my daddy's ashes over the black surface, and watched the wind carry them into the reeds. I drove out without looking back. This time, I didn't hear the trees calling my name. But this isn't where it ends, because Cypress Hollow never really lets go. I moved north, got a job doing pest control in Arkansas, started over, but I still dream of the water, still wake up choking, lungs full of silence. And sometimes, I see things, shadows in puddles, faces in reflections, webbed handprints on bathroom mirrors. A few weeks ago, I found a string of teeth hanging from my rearview mirror. I didn't put it there. Last night, the shower drain gurgled, and I heard singing. It's faint, weak, but I know it. The hollow's not dead, just waiting. And I think I brought part of it with me. I've started mapping dreams again, drawing out the tunnels I saw under the well, the nests, the spines, the mouths. I think there's more than one hollow. Cypress was just the start. I think they're everywhere, waiting under the bayous, the bogs, the marshlands, the places people don't visit unless they're lost or desperate. And I think the drowned ones aren't alone. There's something else, something deeper, something that made them. I don't know what it wants, but it's watching. If you ever hear voices in the swamp, don't answer. If you see teeth strung from a tree, don't touch them. If the water rises when it shouldn't run, because once the hollow remembers you, There's no going back. You don't drown. You change. And the next person who goes looking for you? They won't find a body. They'll find footprints in the mud, all facing in. And maybe, if they're quiet enough, they'll hear you whisper their name.